The stars shimmered silently as the massive ship from the Galactic Empire drifted toward the blue-green planet below, a planet so small, so primitive it seemed laughable. To the fleet commander, who stood with arms behind his back, his armor gleaming under the glow of the war table, the crew round him chuckled and whispered among themselves, calling the humans a backwater race barely worth the fuel it took to reach their solar system. They had seen thousands of worlds, they had conquered empires that stretched across systems, but Earth was a joke in their eyes. Until the screen crackled with it, warning. A voice broke through their secure channels. It was calm, deep, and terrifyingly human. It echoed through every bridge and hallway of every ship in the Empire fleet, a message so short yet so unforgettable. It said simply, "Stay away from Earth." Laughter stopped. The air turned heavy. The crew looked at each other, unsure if it was a prank or a test. One young technician checked her console again and again, confirming the signal had not been broadcasted from any known vessel, but directly from Earth itself. The voice had somehow bypassed all encryption, as if it already knew their frequencies, their weaknesses. Fleet commander snorted and waved a hand dismissively, ordering a full scan of the planet. He told his officers to launch probes toward the surface, gather intelligence about the human species, their military, their defenses. If any, the probes were sent instantly, disappearing into the planet's upper atmosphere. Minutes passed, no data returned. The probes were silent. The commander grew irritated and demanded a report. His science officer stammered as he explained they had lost all contact with the drones. Mid-descent, no trace, no explosion, no malfunction, just nothing. A sudden flicker hit the radar, then another, and then a third. Shadows moving in patterns too tight, too precise to be random. The bridge lights dimmed for a split second and returned, but the ship's AI began speaking in a loop, repeating an ancient Earth phrase. "You were warned. You were warned. You were warned." Panic began to spread, but the commander barked out commands, silencing the bridge and demanding order. He had fought in 100 battles, lost countless troops and ships. He was not going to be outwitted by a minor world filled with primitives. He ordered his cruiser forward, closer to Earth's orbit. He wanted to see what this planet had to offer and crush it himself, if necessary. At the moment they crossed a certain invisible line near the moon, everything changed. An object appeared right in front of them, out of nowhere. No signal, no energy spike, no light trail, just materialized in space like a ghost ship made of shadow. It had no markings, no flags, no colors. It was silent, black, and deadly. Before the Empire ship could react, a beam of light, not hot, not explosive, but pure energy, lanced across space, touching the Empire ship's weapons bay, disabling it completely. Without any external damage, the ship was still functional, but its offensive systems were dead. The commander screamed and ordered evasive maneuvers, but their engines slowed down, like something was dragging them down in gravity that should not exist in empty space. Then came the voice again, only this time it was inside every officer's head, inside their thoughts, clear like it came from behind their ears. "Stay away from Earth." The words felt heavy, as if pressed into their very bones. The commander fell to one knee, gasping as blood trickled from his nose. Some of the junior crew members passed out, others stared blankly at the black ship that hovered in place, unmoving, unblinking. It turned slowly, then vanished as if never there. The systems returned to normal, the weapons came back online, the engines responded again. But fear had already gripped the hearts of every soldier on board. No one spoke, no one laughed. The mighty Galactic Empire had just been touched by something they did not understand. Back in the central command of the fleet, high above in the flagship, a transmission arrived from the first cruiser. It contained scrambled logs, corrupted video, static, and fragments of the voice recording. It was enough to raise alarm. The admiral of the fleet, an elder warrior with decades of combat under his belt, listened to the recording again and again, his face unreadable, his eyes focused. He did not believe in ghosts or magic. He believed in force, in numbers, and war. Yet something about the human voice, something about the way the entire cruiser was shut down without a shot being fired, shook even his stone heart. He turned to his officers and issued new orders. Send another fleet, send more ships around the planet, overwhelm it by sheer power. If they are hiding technology or weapons, find them and seize them. He said. His officers nodded, though their hands trembled slightly as they relayed. The commander had just become more than a target. It had become a challenge, a mystery, a threat to their pretty and deep below the surface of Earth. In a hidden base untouched by satellites or space sensors, a human stood before a giant screen, watching everything, his face calm, his eyes sharp. He whispered to the air, "Let them come," and the ground beneath him pulsed with a quiet energy. As Earth itself began to wake up, fleet approached Earth again, this time with double the ships, triple the firepower, and 10 times the arrogance. The admiral of the Empire watched from his throne of steel aboard the dreadnought, His golden armor glowing under artificial stars, he sneered at the blue-green marble ahead. As his officers chanted in unison, ready to crush whatever resistance the planet dared to offer to them. This was not going to be a battle in their minds, it was going to be a slaughter. They were here to make an example out of Earth, but the silence around the planet remained unbroken. No transmissions, no threats, no signs of aggression. It was as if Earth had vanished, or worse, it was daring them to come closer. The Admiral gave the order: advance to the next orbit, initiate full scan, and prepare the outer ships to unleash the first wave of warning fire. They would not destroy the planet, not yet. They wanted the humans to beg to kneel. As the first line of Empire ships moved forward, something invisible flickered around Earth. Space itself rippled for a moment like a mirage, and then all of a sudden the Empire ships lost visuals of one another. The systems blinked, their radars screamed, their long-range communications went dark, and their connection to the dreadnought was severed. It was as if they had all entered a maze made of shadows. Panic surged across the bridge of the dreadnought. The Admiral's voice echoed like thunder, demanding answers. But his officers could only report one thing: we are blind, sir. We cannot see our own ships. We cannot locate Earth. Then, without a sound, a human vessel appeared right beside one of the forward Empire cruisers. It was sleek black and shaped like a blade, slicing space itself. It had no heat signature, no life readings, no radio, no energy emissions. Yet it hovered inches from the Empire cruiser, as if mocking them. The cruiser tried to fire, but its weapons misfired, turning inward and shorting out its own systems. The lights dimmed, the gravity flickered, and before anyone could react, the cruiser imploded. In complete silence, the explosion did not even echo through space, it just vanished. And when the debris scattered, it showed the human vessel still floating, unharmed, untouched, unfazed. The Admiral's eyes widened, but he refused to retreat. He had never lost, he would never surrender. He shouted for all remaining ships to engage fire. It will locate that human ship and obliterate it. But then it happened again. Another Empire ship disappeared. No flash, no attack, no visible cause. It was there. And then it was not, then another, each ship falling silently as if erased from existence. The dreadnought began to shake, not from attack, but from fear. The crew could feel it, the way a mouse senses a predator nearby, not by sound or sight, but by instinct and dread. They began to whisper among themselves ancient myths about Deathworlders, creatures from cursed planets who survive fire, ice, war, and extinction, who never die, who only evolve, who fight like demons and think like gods. And Earth was one of them, a confirmed death world. Human voice returned again, not through calms, not through signals, but in their very minds. Soft, calm, cold, it said, you were warned. And this time it was not just a voice, it came with images flashing in their brains. Images of human wars, of cities burning, of soldiers marching, of oceans turned red and skies turned black. It was not a threat, it was history. The Admiral gritted his teeth, his hand clutching the metal rail as his mind throbbed under the pressure of that voice. He ordered all ships to retreat, to form a circle around Earth, regroup. But as the order went out, only half the ships responded. The others were already gone. Not destroyed, not damaged, just gone. In Earth, far below, in a massive underground facility, a human commander stood before a wall of holograms, each showing the Empire fleet. Each ship tagged, each move calculated. Behind him, a row of officers worked silently, guiding the satellites, the drones, the field disruptors that cloaked Earth's might. From alien ice, the commander turned to a younger soldier and said, activate phase 2. The soldier hesitated. Are we ready, sir? The commander nodded slowly. We were born ready. In orbit above the planet, the remaining Empire ships began to move into position, forming a shield ring. But just then, hundreds of smaller human vessels emerged from nothingness like phantoms appearing from the folds of space. They surrounded the alien ships without locking on, without warning, just appearing and watching. The Admiral screamed, fire, fire, destroy them all. But the weapons failed to lock. The targeting system spun in confusion. The missiles detonated in place. The laser rays powered down, and the reactors flickered in defeat. Then the human vessels lit up one by one, forming a symbol in the void, a circle around the dreadnought, and a single word drawn in light: stay. And just as quickly they vanished. A gainsellance fell across the dreadnought. The Admiral sank into his chair, staring at the empty space where his fleet used to be. He looked at the Earth below, now glowing softly with strange energy lines forming across the continents, like circuits on a chip. Now understood, Earth was not just defending, it was watching. It was learning, and it was warning again. Somewhere deep in his bones he finally felt something he had never felt before. Not fear, not hatred, but respect, the kind that one predator gives to another. Inside the hidden chambers deep beneath the Earth's surface, the human command center remained cold and precise, untouched by panic. While entire fleets vanished above their heads, there were no alarms, no shouting, only eyes tracking data, hands moving across glowing panels and minds calculating 100 possible futures in perfect silence. The human commander, known only as Sentinel, stood before a vertical screen, where symbols in alien languages swirled and changed, each line of text fed by intercepts from Empire channels, each word dissected and understood faster than any known AI in the galaxy. Sentinel turned and asked his science officer what they knew about the latest enemy designations, and the young officer responded swiftly, reading from memory. Their flagship is the class Zarek Dreadnought, housing over 1 million troops, powered by twin hypercores and protected by 7 layers of crystalline armor. Yet none of that mattered, Sentinel said, as he gestured toward the black display, which now showed a schematic of Earth's most dangerous secret project, Leviathan. Project Leviathan was not a weapon in the traditional sense. It was a living defense system built across generations, hidden in the crust of the planet, woven through tectonic plates, cloaked beneath the oceans, and embedded into mountains. A neural network of weaponized physics, created by human survivors of 5 forgotten alien invasions. It drew power from the planet itself, and learned with every threat, adapting, growing, remembering every enemy, every weakness, every mistake. It was not controlled, it was not aimed, it was simply awakened when Earth was threatened. And this time it was fully aware. Back in the Empire's command center, far from Earth, a council of high admirals gathered around a holographic table, replaying the fragmentary data from the failed fleets. Each ship log ended with the same phrase, unknown anomaly, followed by blackout. They debated loudly, accusing one another of underestimating humans. Some demanded more force, others warned of retreat. But none could explain what had really happened. Only one among them remained quiet. A captured alien officer from the First Fleet, a tall female with dark blue skin, sharp eyes, and a scar down her temple. She had been stationed on the first cruiser that encountered the human voice, and she alone had survived. When the council asked her to speak, she stood slowly, her chains rattling slightly, but her voice was steady and cold. She said, "You think they are animals, primitives hiding behind lucky tricks, but you are wrong. They are predators of a kind we have never seen. They do not react. They anticipate, they do not defend, they lure and strike and vanish." She paused, her eyes meeting each admiral in turn. "They knew we were coming long before we reached them. They chose when and how to answer. They led us and then broke us piece by piece, and still gave us a chance to leave it." Admirals scoffed. Some called her a coward, others questioned her loyalty, but none could deny that she had looked into something none of them could comprehend. Her words lingered in the air, even as the room filled with noise and fear, because for the first time in centuries, the Galactic Empire had lost ships and soldiers, without a single human casualty on Earth. Sentinel stood in front of an ancient steel vault, sealed for over 200 years. Behind it lay the old war records, archives not stored in servers, not kept in data drives, but carved into slabs, etched into metal walls, built to survive apocalypses. He ordered the vault opened, and the heavy doors slid apart. With the groan of forgotten time inside were the names of the first invaders of Earth, long before the Empire. Long before the stars were mapped, these enemies had burned cities, poisoned skies, shattered continents. And yet humans endured. From those ashes came the blueprint for Project Leviathan, not just a defense, but a promise that no enemy would ever touch Earth again. And if they tried, Earth would not fight fair. Earth would fight smart and silent and final. In orbit, a new wave of alien probes approached, this time sent not by warships, but scientific vessels tasked with understanding the source of their losses. They carried deep skin modules and ghost sensors designed to see beyond cloaking, to penetrate false gravity fields, to track cold fusion emissions. But the moment they crossed into Earth's space, they began to drift, not explode, not vanish, but drift slowly, as if they had forgotten their purpose there. Data feeds showed nothing but static, their internal memory wiped clean, as if Earth had simply erased their reason for existing. Goni probe managed to send an image before blackout. It was of the Earth, taken from high orbit, but the continents were no longer familiar. Lines of firelight and circuitry formed across the planet, like veins of some colossal creature. The atmosphere pulsed with invisible currents. The oceans shimmered with coded waves. Earth was not just alive, it was aware, and that terrified even the coldest minds. Back on the moon, a small human outpost picked up fragments of alien chatter. Broadcast through stolen Empire frequencies, whispers of fear, of withdrawal, of superstition. Some alien commanders had begun calling Earth the eye, the place that watches others. Simply called it the Endworld, sent and watched the signals grow louder, and smiled, not with joy, not with pride, but with understanding. Humans had spent generations preparing for this moment, not to conquer, not to rule, but to survive and to send one clear message to the stars: this is our home. And you were warned. The Galactic Empire gathered its might one last time, and sent an invasion force so massive it eclipsed moons, a fleet so wide it darkened stars. Above Earth the dreadnoughts led the way, followed by carriers and swarm ships, battlecruisers, and atmospheric strikers moving in perfect coordination behind them. Millions of soldiers waited inside armored dropships, each one armed with tech designed to crack open planets, burn oceans, flatten cities, erase resistance before it even began. This was not just war, this was dominance, an effort to crush the will of Earth. With the full weight of galactic superiority inside, the lead dreadnought, the Admiral, stood with both fists clenched at his sides. He had seen his fellow commanders fall to Earth's silence, seen their fleets vanish, seen the impossible. And still he believed in the power of numbers, of force of the Empire. He leaned forward and shouted, "Into the war net now, they fall today. We own Earth." Below the black sky, Earth waited still, calm, as if nothing approached. Not a single ship was seen, not a single defense fired. And that silence made the alien commanders uneasy, but orders were orders. The descent began, and thousands of alien dropships shot downward through the atmosphere. Fire trailed behind them, metal thunder roared over clouds, but as the first wave neared the surface, something invisible caught them. Not a weapon, not a missile, not a shield in the traditional sense, but a net of energy so thin it could not be seen, so vast. It wrapped the entire planet. Skynet activated without a sound, and every dropship that touched its surface simply froze mid-air, not crashing, not falling, just stopped as if hung on invisible strings. Their engines failed, their systems locked, their soldiers inside screamed as their helmets fogged up from breath and panic, unable to move, trapped in mechanical coffins suspended in the sky. Second wave came behind them, faster, trying to break through the energy web, but they collided with the first wave, crashing, turning, spinning, falling. Some erupted in the sky, their debris raining like fireflies over forests and oceans, while others ricocheted back into orbit dead before landing. The alien fleet above screamed through their channels, demanding answers, demanding a path forward, but Earth gave no reply, only silence, only that same ancient patience, as if watching, not reacting, just observing. Then came the human counterstrike, not from missiles, not from ships, but from quantum slips, folds in space opening around the alien command vessels like tears in fabric. And from each slip emerged a single human soldier, not in armor, not with heavy weapons, but wearing skin suits pulsing with strange light, their eyes glowing, their movements sharp and smooth, and terrifyingly precise. The soldiers did not fire. They appeared inside control rooms, walked silently among screaming crews, ignored plasma rifles and sonic blasts that passed right through them, as if their bodies were shadows. And then with a touch, they deactivated everything: power, life support, weapons, engines. One by one, the ships began to drift powerless as their crew collapsed from fear or confusion or some invisible pulse that shattered their nervous zone. Such soldier appeared inside the throne chamber of the Admiral himself, and stood still as the guards opened fire and missed as the walls shook and lights flickered. The Admiral stepped forward, drawing a blade of charged energy, roaring his defiance. But the human did not move. He simply raised one hand, and the blade stopped in mid-swing, not blocked, not touched, simply held in the air by force unseen, and then melted to liquid, falling harmlessly to the floor. The human finally spoke only one sentence: "You never listened," and then vanished like smoke, leaving the Admiral kneeling in silence, surrounded by the dead hum of systems that no longer obeyed him in the black ocean of space where stars once guided fleets. The Empire's greatest ships now drifted mute and still, surrounded by rings of floating metal and shattered pride. But the humans did not celebrate, they did not broadcast, they did not demand surrender. Instead, they activated something even more terrifying. Earth's core pulsed once, and a signal shot outward past the solar system, past the stars, into every known channel used by the Empire. And it was not a voice. It was data, pure raw terrifying data, showing every failure, every weakness, every blind spot, every invasion blueprint from the Empire exposed like a map of naked secrets sent to every other race in the galaxy in seconds, and across the stars. Species that once feared the Empire read those secrets, saw the truth, and Rosian Earth Sentinel stood before a map of the solar system, watching the last alien ship retreat, its engines sputtering, its pride broken. He did not smile, he did not boast, he simply turned to his officers and said, "Prepare Earth's skies for peace, but prepare our hands for war," because this was not the end. This was only the message, and they had delivered it, without a single battle, in the way the humans always knew they would. With silence, with shadows, with strategy. They had told the galaxy not once, but now forever: stay away from Earth. Silence across the galaxy after the failed invasion of Earth was not peace, it was fear disguised as quiet. Empires that once roared across the stars suddenly stopped to listen to whispers. Reports spread of ships that never returned, of commanders who screamed in their last transmissions of a planet that seemed to breathe and watch and learn. Earth had become more than a world, it had become a legend. But legends were often misunderstood, and the Empire refused to believe in ghosts. They believed in power, and so they returned one final time with their most ancient weapon, a ship so large it blocked out constellations, a dreadnought called the Eye of Dominion, built with forbidden technology, powered by suns contained within its core, and wrapped in dark matter plating said to be immune to time itself. Inside the Eye of Dominion sat the Supreme Marshal, a being who had never lost a war. His voice alone had crushed rebellions, his hands stained with the destruction of countless civilizations, his eyes fixed on Earth not with hatred, but with challenge. He believed he had seen everything the universe could offer, and he did not believe in fear. Until now, Earth remained still again, no fleets, no missiles, no warnings, just that ever-present quiet like a storm that had not yet begun to move. The Eye of Dominion approached slowly past the wreckage of previous fleets, past the drifting remains of ships that never escaped, and with every kilometer gained the temperature. Inside the dreadnought dropped, the light dimmed, and the minds of its crew began to wander into panic, though none dared speak it out loud. They all felt something ancient watching them. Supreme Marshal ordered the firing sequence to begin. He wanted no skin, no invasion, no transmission, only annihilation. He would destroy Earth from a distance, leave nothing behind, then spread the wreckage across the stars as a warning to every other race. And as the charge built within the Eye of Dominion, the space around Earth began to bend, but not under pressure, under awareness. It was not gravity, it was not energy, it was attention, focused and cold and deep like the stare of a predator, in total stillness. Back on Earth, deep beneath the mantle, the final chamber of Project Leviathan stirred. It had remained untouched until now, sealed for generations, designed not to protect Earth, but to end threats permanently. A chamber of protocols not even Sentinel had ever opened until now, standing before the final console, surrounded by energy that hummed like a heartbeat. He placed his hand on the surface, and the system awoke. A voice older than any human living filled the chamber. Not mechanical, not artificial, but human, recorded long ago by those who first fought the invaders before the stars had names. It said, activation of Titan protocol confirmed. And across the planet, structures hidden under deserts and oceans, an ice cracked open, revealing towers of impossible design, machines that did not move with wheels or engines, but with thought, with will, with history, rising slowly toward the sky, not to launch, but to become part of something greater in orbit. The Eye of Dominion finished charging its weapon. The Supreme Marshal stood ready and commanded fire. And in that moment, a beam wide enough to split moons launched toward Earth, a white stream of death that would erase the world in seconds. But it never reached the surface. Instead, it bent, curved, slowed, and stopped mid-air above the Earth, held by nothing visible, as if the planet had caught it in one hand and crushed it into dust. The Supreme Marshal shouted orders, demanded explanations, but none came, only static, and one by one his officers fell silent as the ship began to fracture, not from outside force, but from within, as if the ship itself no longer wished to obey. Then from Earth rose a light, not bright, not hot, but steady. It was not a weapon in the traditional sense. It was a signal not sent through space, but through existence itself, and every mind on the dreadnought heard it. Every soul in that fleet felt it. Not words, not threats, but a message burned into the soul. You came to destroy, you were offered peace, you chose pride, now witness Earth. And the Titan protocol fully activated. A single pulse escaped Earth, silent, invisible, pure. And in that moment, the Eye of Dominion ceased to exist, not exploded, not broken, not scattered. It was simply no longer there, replaced by silence and the cold echo of a mistake too late to take back. The stars looked down and saw nothing but the calm blue world once mocked, now feared. And above it, nothing remained. In the command center, Sentinel looked at the empty space, once filled with enemy ships, then turned to his team and said, tell the galaxy we are done. Send no threats, send no promise, send only the truth. Earth stands, Earth endures, Earth watches, and those who come with war will vanish like echoes in the wind. And across the stars, empires paused, kings hesitated, warlords trembled, because the myth had become real, the story had become memory, and the message had been written not in blood, not in fire, but in silence. Stay away from Earth. Galaxy did not breathe for 7 cycles. After the disappearance of the Eye of Dominion, it was as if the stars themselves held their breath, afraid to speak, afraid to echo the name of the world that now hovered in every shadowed mind. Earth, a planet once marked as primitive, now marked as untouchable. The data of what had occurred was fragmented, warped by fear and silence, but every race, every empire, every council had heard the same whisper, felt the same pressure, seen the same void where once stood the mightiest ship ever forged. And that whisper had carried no demand, no boast, only a memory burned into thought. Earth stands Earth watches Earth dissidents in distant corners of the universe. Leaders began to rewrite their protocols. Entire battle doctrines shifted to include avoidance paths around soul messages. Once filled with threats now carried respect or silence. Even the most ancient species who had once shaped galaxies, with their breath turned their attention inward, not from cowardice, but from wisdom. For the first time in known history, unity began to form, not through treaties, not through trade, but through fear of a common boundary, not a border of lines or fences, but of understanding. No one would cross near Earth, not again in Earth itself. However, this silence was not fear. It was reflection. In the deep chambers of the command vault, Sentinel walked alone past rows of inactive terminals, past relics of old wars, past the archive walls, where history had been carved, not written, each moment captured by hand to survive time, to resist distortion. He paused before one section older than most, its metal stained with age, but its message still clear, a record of the first time humanity had been invaded, a time when Earth was nearly lost, and yet Enduretta reached out and touched the words with bare fingers, remembering not just the battle but the choice to defend, not to conquer, to resist, not to dominate. And in that moment, he felt the weight of what humanity had become, not monsters, not rulers, not saviors, but a wall, a final answer to unchecked arrogance, a memory that punished. The present in orbit above Earth, the last of the Leviathan satellites returned to stasis, their lenses closing, their arms folding into the black shells that shimmered once and disappeared again into the folds of spacetime, their purpose fulfilled, their threat no longer needed unless called again. The skies cleared, the stars resumed their twinkling dance, and the Earth spun slowly with its clouds and waters untouched by warfare across the galaxy. In a council of species once oppressed by the Empire, a gathering began, not to form armies, not to seek vengeance, but to understand. A voice from a desert planet spoke first, saying they erased the strongest dreadnought with a whisper. What then is strength? A voice from a moonlit ocean replied. They fought no war and still they won. What then is victory? A voice from a sunless world added. They spoke no threat and yet we listen. What then is power? And so began a conversation, not of fear, but of reflection. Earth had not claimed a throne, had not taken spoils, had not demanded obedience. Earth had simply stood, and in that standing had shown the difference between noise and truth, between pride and purpose, between war and warning. Back in the human council chambers, Sentinel met with the few who knew the full truth, scientists, strategists, historians, and one elder known only as the Keeper. Her eyes clouded by age, but sharp within. She had seen the last war before Project Leviathan was activated, seen cities fall and oceans burn and children grow silent. She asked a single question, will they return? And Sentinel answered with no certainty, only preparation, saying if they do we will still be here, not louder but stronger, not crueler but colder. And she nodded, understanding that Earth was no longer just a home. It was a reminder, in the grasslands where no cities stood, and in the mountains untouched by machines, and in the oceans deeper than light, human children played, laughed, explored, unaware of the fleets that had once hovered above them, unaware of the eyes that now watched from afar and whispered tales of the planet called the Endworld. The Earthlings danced in the rain and stared at stars and asked questions, not of war, but of wonder, because they were born not from fear, but from survival, and in them lived the calm terror of a species that never forgets. Among the distant stars, a lonely ship drifted, long abandoned, once part of the first fleet that vanished. In Earth orbit, its system still flickering, its walls marked by time, and inside it a single panel blinked endlessly, showing one message never acknowledged, never read, a message sent from Earth long ago, before Project Leviathan, before the dreadnoughts, before the fear. It read in a simple human voice, we wish for peace, but we prepare for war. Come in friendship or do not come at alliance. So the galaxy remembered, and so the stars stayed quiet, and so Earth remained in the cold void beyond the last known star. The galaxy had moved on, but it had not forgotten. Earth was not spoken of casually. It was not plotted on trade maps. It was not marked on navigation routes. Yet its presence shaped every conversation of power, every whisper of expansion, every caution of war. Earth had become a myth more real than fact, a warning etched into the memory of all intelligent life. It was not just a place now, it was a boundary of reason. But inside Earth, the people lived simply, not as gods, not as warriors, but as humans. They built homes, they taught children, they grew food, and traveled across lands once destroyed by old wars. They looked up at the night sky with curiosity, not fear, and still they prepared, not in hatred, but in habit, not in paranoia, but in understanding that peace is not the absence of threat, but the readiness to face one. Sentinel stood on the peak of the observation dome built at the edge of the atmosphere, watching the silent night beyond the stars that once brought war. now simply blinked in peace below him. Project Leviathan had returned to its dormant state, buried once again inside the bones of the planet, waiting only if ever needed again. He remembered every face lost in Earth's past, every invasion, every scream, every vow carved into steel deep below the oceans. He remembered that humans had never started a galactic war. They only ended. Anya, a young officer, joined him at the edge of the dome, her eyes reflecting the sky. She asked him what would happen if Earth was tested again, if one day another empire ignored the warnings. Sentinel replied calmly, "Then we will remind them again, but each time the reminder becomes quieter. Each time the message becomes sharper, until no one ever forgets." Elsewhere on a quiet moon orbiting a distant gas giant, a summit took place, not of warlords or kings, but of those who survived the empire's rise and fall. They wore no crowns, they carried no flags, but each one had seen the dreadnought disappear. Each one had watched Earth reshape the future. With no ships, with no demands, they met to discuss not how to attack or defend, but how to change, how to grow without destruction. And one by one, they agreed Earth had shown them that power without purpose collapses, that strength without wisdom becomes noise, and that survival is not domination, but balance. And Earth children gathered in a quiet valley where the stars were clearest, and their elders told stories not of gods or monsters, but of the day the sky caught fire and no sound followed, of the invisible net that caught ships in mid-air, of the human who appeared in the heart of the dreadnought and turned steel into dust. They listened not in fear, but in awe, not because it was violent, but because it was true. Young child asked why we did not invade back, why we did not destroy them. Sentinel, who happened to be passing by, stopped and smiled softly, answering, "Because we are not them, and that is why they fear us, because we do not need to conquer, to be strong, because we do not raise our voice to be heard, because we warned them once, and they chose not to listen, and still we left them alive to remember." That night, as the stars turned overhead, the Earth pulsed with quiet life. Its oceans whispered, its forests breathed, its mountains stood firm, and unseen satellites drifted just beyond the clouds, watching, always silent, always ready. In the great archives beneath the polar ice, a single plaque was added to the wall where history was carved by hand. It read, not in pride but in memory, here stood a world that bent, but never broke, that burned, but never bowed, that rose not to rule, but to endure, and above all that spoke only once, and was finally heard across the stars. No ship crossed Sol, no sensor scanned its orbit, no fleet approached, but messages did flow, stories did spread, and every being who heard them paused before deciding, paused before expanding, paused, and remembered that there exists a planet on the edge of the void where silence is stronger than war, where peace is sharper than blades, and where the most terrifying words ever spoken were also the simplest. Stay away from Earth. And so the story ends, not with fire, not with conquest, not with victory claimed in blood, but with the survival of truth, the endurance of warning, and the unshakable presence of a world that stood alone and still stood tall. Earth was not lost, it was not forgotten, it was not erased, it was respected, it was remembered, it was Earth, and it remains forever in a distant archive floating between stars, untouched by time, sealed from light. A single ancient terminal flickered to life, its systems long dormant stirred by a single encrypted signal that pulsed in silence, decoded only by those who remembered what once happened near a small blue-green planet. The terminal displayed a message, not long, not loud, just a phrase burned into the circuits of the galaxy. Earth remains. The signal traveled not through wires, not through waves, but through memory and myth, reaching corners of the galaxy where machines had long rusted, where empires had crumbled, where whispers of Earth were carved into the bones of ships that never returned, and wherever it reached it stopped wars, calmed storms, silenced revolts, not by command, but by presence alone. In a forgotten world where trees covered ruins, and nature reclaimed steel, a child looked up at the sky, asking an elder if the legends were true about the world that defeated the stars without ever launching a fleet. The elder only nodded and said they gave one warning, and that was a now hand in the quiet halls of an alien university, hidden beneath layers of crystal towers. A group of scholars debated history, not of dates or numbers, but of meaning. They spoke of Earth not as conquerors, not as saviors, but as something else, something beyond calculation. A species that defined itself not by how far it reached, but by how long it stood, and how clearly it remembered. Back on Earth, in a valley untouched by machines, a new generation trained not with hatred, not with pride, but with purpose. They ran through forests that once hid bunkers, through rivers that once carried fire, through silence that once held screams. Their instructors told them not just how to defend, but why to defend, not just how to fight, but when to choose not to, and above all, when to speak and when to stay silent. Sentinel, now older, sat beneath a tree, planted from a seed saved during the first invasion. Beside him, the keeper rested, her eyes closed, listening to the wind that carried no alarms, no signals, only peace. He turned to her and asked, "Do you think they will return?" And she answered, "If they do, they will find the Earth still standing, and they will remember above them in orbit one satellite blinked a single light before vanishing into shadow, joining the others in their eternal watch. The sky clear, the stars bright, the silence complete, not empty, but full of meaning, full of warning, full of the unspoken truth that shaped 1,000 civilizations from that day onward. For Earth had taught the galaxy something no weapon ever could, no fleet ever achieved. Earth had proven that true strength is not in attack, but in patience, not in volume, but in clarity, not in fury, but in a single whisper that echoes forever and across the void where time bends and matter fades. The last transmission from Earth drifts forever, repeating, not in threat, not in demand, just as a reminder, a soft voice carrying the words that shape the star. Stay away from Earth, and